first live webinar for Business Propel. My name's Ray Welling. I'm the editor-in-chief of Business Propel, and I'm here today with Michael Derin, who's the managing partner for the Azure Group, which is an accounting and corporate advisory firm. And as we said in our invitation information, we're going to be talking to Michael today about how to improve your business performance in 2016 and beyond. So Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Ray. It's great to be here.
Great. So let's just get stuck into the questions. Now, the first thing I wanted to ask you, Michael, I know a few months ago you wrote in your year-end wrap-up that the Australian economy is stagnant at that point and weighed down by the effects of the bust in the mining industry. How would you characterize the 2016 economy now that we're in April?
I would describe it as there's almost, there's good money flow in the economy at the moment. You know, what we're seeing with businesses is there's good money flow, they're profitable, not necessarily record profits, but business is quite stable at the moment, Ray. But I would say there's a false sense of stability. Just my sense of the economy and business. The true picture for me is if you look at underlying some of the economic factors. Months ago, the mining sector. There's no doubt that the construction boom in the mining sector is well past its peak, and that's very much linked then to China. And we all know that China's growth has slowed, which is tied then to their manufacturing. So there's a flow-on effect to Australian economy because they're our biggest trading partner, and we haven't seen the impact of that to date. You know, in a material way. Then you talk about the property sector. Now, the property sector's been our, silver lining. It's the thing that's really been strong, particularly in the big capital cities like Sydney and Melbourne, etc. Mm-hmm. And look, the property sector, and we're still seeing lots of cranes up, in Sydney and Melbourne, and it's a fantastic sector. And that stimulated the economy, and there's been lots of investment from overseas like China, etc. What we also are starting to see is sort of, in the media, just on the weekend, things like the off-the-plan apartments, which have, now been constructed, are showing losses of 20 to 30% for the vendors, which to me means that there's a sense of vulnerability in the property market itself, particularly with the apartment dwellings, etc., that have been purchased off the plan that will come to market and cause a big level of supply. Out west, I think we're probably seeing tools and rental flows in, out western Sydney and other areas. So it gives me concern. The big item is the government. We've had numerous years of budget deficits, of the government trying to stimulate the economy, and right now I think both sides of governments are struggling with the impact of revenue raising, of taxes, of spending, of what to do with the May. We've got a budget coming up, an early budget coming up. I caught up even with Scott Morrison last week in one of my business manufacturing businesses, and and obviously he's doing his budget, a week early. So it's going to be interesting what comes out of that. And we've also got the possibility of an early election in July, but if not that, in September. So it creates a lot of uncertainty for businesses and for people in Australia. Look, the last point I throw out there is competition. Global competition is the biggest impact on Australian business and Australian economy it's ever been. We're seeing international businesses arrive here in droves, and they're coming with new technology or new ways of doing business, and some of them are genuinely much better businesses than what we've got here in Australia. And technology itself is impacting business. So global competition, the world's getting smaller. Access, the entry into Australian business, competitive market forces just aren't what they were 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And these factors mean that the landscape in which we're working in now has changed. And that's why I say that there's a false sense of stability in the economy right now.
No, fair enough. So with that in mind, what can businesses, particularly small and medium businesses, do, to cushion the blow that if it hasn't already arrived, is going to soon arrive.
Yeah.
So how can they prepare for the rough times ahead?
Yeah. Look, when we say rough times, I'm not advocating, massive, like big rough times. It's hard to know exactly what that impact will be from those factors.
I suppose like whether will have a recession or just a slowdown.
Or a slowdown, or what that looks like. And so, but notwithstanding that, I absolutely believe, and in any business that I'm talking to, I sit a lot of boards, work with a lot of businesses, and what I'm talking to them about is that you need to be prepared, and you need to be prepared more than ever before. Your business might be cruising along really well right now. What can you do? There's a lot of things that you can do, and I'm sure most businesses out there know what they can do within their business. They know their businesses very well. The big ticket items I talk to businesses about, let's talk firstly about the stable, solid, profitable business out there that's been in business for some time. Mm-hmm. Those businesses, number one, what you can do is make sure that you are relevant, make sure your products and services continue to be relevant in the market, you're innovative, you're continuing to improve your services, and continue to expect that that's going to help you retain clients in the long term, which is what you need to do. There's other strategies you can do. You can look at things like your revenue and your cost model. So from a revenue point of view, if you feel like times are going to get more challenging in 12 to 20, you want to tie in customers longer term, but potentially you want to tie in suppliers shorter term, even if that might mean that the pricing of those suppliers might not be as competitive. Mm-hmm. So it gives you flexibility within your business model should you feel like things come off, revenue comes off. People had that within, they've been in a very strong position. A lot of people didn't expect the impact of what the GFC would do to their business. Mm-hmm. That's the majority of people obviously listening today, but the other would be those startup businesses. There's startup businesses out there, and they're excited, and we work with lots of them, and in the technology sector in particular. And those businesses, they're not break even, they're losing money, or they're putting a lot of time into their businesses, and and if they've got capital, they've got a cash burn that they're working towards, and they need to get to a break even point or to the next capital raising or something like that. And I think businesses just because the market's in terms of valuations, in terms of the access to funding, and these businesses just need to be very conscious of what their break-even point, get there as quickly as possible, or bringing capital now earlier. It might not be priced as well, but at least you look at the big banks, look at the Fortescues and the Rio Tintos. They bring in money, before the tough times hit. So they extend out their debt long term, so that they don't suffer the impacts of short-term debt, because they're looking at iron ore prices, they're looking at their business model, and they're making sure that they're withstanding short-term, long-term effects of their business.
Right. Okay. Now, one of the big buzzwords, floating around at the moment is this term disruption, and people think of it in terms of new large companies come in, like Uber taxi business, Airbnb disrupting hotel business, that sort of thing. But one of the things that a lot of business experts, including yourself, have said that businesses of all sorts of sizes need to look at disrupting what they're doing, even if they're things are traveling well. Why is it important for businesses today to look at disrupting themselves rather than just continue with the current successes they might have?
Look, this word disrupt has sort of been like the big word that's popped up in the last 3 years, and like you said, it's the key to it is how small business actually disrupting big businesses. And the context is also small businesses, and it actually to disrupt themselves. Is disruption the right word for a small business? I think about that quite often, and yes, if you had a Video Easy store, how do you disrupt yourself to actually be relevant? It's actually very difficult. If you've got a news agency, same problem, right? How do you disrupt yourself? it's actually sometimes hard for a small business to actually embrace what disruption might be, because actually outside of their business is actually it's very difficult to see an opportunity to actually do something in the same sector but be disruptive to themselves and to others. I think my message probably for small businesses is more about what makes a great company. What makes a great company? A great company is a company that continues to be innovative, that continues in products and services in the market that they're in. They continue to respect their relationship with their customers and do a very, focused on that. And for those people out there, read the book Good to Great. It's, these sorts of lessons that you learn from what it is to be a great company. Great companies aren't necessarily always completely disrupting the market sector that they're in. They're actually just better at what they do than everyone else. And so, and it's looking at how you do that. You just got to continue to be better than others at what you do. And obviously, if you're in a sector where you're seeing the writings on the wall, from a personal, financial and business perspective, you need to be aware of that, because
like Video Easy is
like the Video's Easy,
or a video store of some description. Yeah.
Any sort of, there is a lot of disruption going out there. And the exciting thing about that is actually, I think the big advantage is for small business, because big business just struggle. They maneuver and change their business model. Look at, Channel 9 coming out announcing, their deterioration in their revenue just from a lot of their programs. But then you've got a lot of other things going on in the economy where, people like Optus are, winning the rights to the EPL over what's been paying 3 times the price for it, and providing, access to that, through your apps these days. So, there's disruption happening from big players against big players, but the opportunity really is in the is for small business to actually be the disruptor. It's actually an exciting time of small business. You can build a small business very, very quickly that you could never do in the same way 20 years ago. That's what's exciting. Look at these massive businesses that have been popping up out of nowhere in a very short period of time.
Can you think of any examples in your own practice of maybe clients that have a huge shift?
Look, what we deal with in our client base is we deal with the disruptors. So we deal with the technology businesses that are setting up and doing something different and launching new models. And, we've got clients that are raising capital with ideas that are just phenomenal, that can be the next Uber and be the next, LinkedIn. And they're very exciting businesses to work with. In terms of the core businesses to work with, our private clients and all those, I had a breakfast with one of our clients this morning. They turn over, quite a significant amount of money. They employ 100 people. And, the CEO is talking to me about how they're introducing new technology into their business to basically continue to be the leader in their space, which they are, and continue to provide the full service solution to their customers. So the customers are engaged in what they're doing because he's seeing the pressures in their business model. So, you're disrupting your business model. You're doing horizontal, able to provide the solutions that your customers are looking for all the time.
Right, great, okay. Now, in a recent article that we published on Business Propel, and I'll send a link to that article as part of our show notes, you outlined 8 things that businesses can do today to improve their business performance this year and beyond. Let's look at those things in more detail. So the first area you mentioned is monitoring your effectiveness. Now, what can SMEs do to put this sort of thing in place?
Yep. So it might sound basic, but I think it's important to understand the concept of effectiveness first, right? So what is an effective business? A lot of people think that they do their business really well. That's why they're in business. They do it well. They might be making money. Actually, it's hard to look from the outside how good your own business is. What is an effective business? Well, you think about that. At the end of the day, in business, you're creating leads. Those leads are turning into opportunities of engagement. Trying to engage, whether it's in a product whether someone walks into a store to buy a loaf of bread, or whether it's, whatever it is, you then engage in those people, find a method to price that appropriately, that it's profitable. You're then delivering whatever it is to that customer, and there's either a production process where that product's made and it's quality product, depending on where your position in the market is, or it's a service, or you're trying to provide a quality service and then you're delivering that, and then you hopefully you're able to recover money for that and bank that money. And so what is effectiveness? I know it sounds like a long answer to your question, but it's that whole process and how effective you are in that process, in that business that you run, and looking at how effective you are in the value chain for what you do as a business. So how do you do that? The only way to do that is to monitor those processes, to monitor what's happening in how effective you are. And if you don't do that, you might think you've got a product in your store that's just not moving as quickly as possible, but because you're not monitoring it closely, you work it out. You'll work it out 6 months. Someone says to you, do you know your products which move or don't move? Yeah, I know, but how quickly do you move them? Because if you're working it out 6 months, 9 months late, that's 6 months, 9 months of all your products turning over 6, 9 months too late. Or if you're not monitoring how your leads are turning into customers and how those customers are being engaged, or how your pricing is. So you need to monitor these areas of your business, and you need to be looking at, am I doing things I don't need to do? Am I doing things that, am I not doing things that I do need to do? And all these things become important. And the only way to understand the effectiveness of business is to monitor what I call key performance indicators and track those items. And that then leads to good decision making. Good decision making is a driver of successful businesses.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I think a lot of small businesses would probably say, "Oh, look, that's fine in theory, but I have to, set up these elaborate processes so I can monitor effectiveness." From a pragmatic point of view, what are some of these basics that small businesses need to, how can you do it without spending so much time in the monitoring that's actually affecting profit?
Well, I think for starters, businesses need to realise that in today's day and age, it's not that hard to monitor data. This is why we're living in this digital age where you've got technology and you've got all these forces where business can access. Like, look at a landscaper. A landscaper these days can download an app and they can turn up on site, do their job, issue the invoice to their customer online, collect the money on the spot. But 99% of landscapers, we live in an old model where they go back to their back home, and they're trying to produce an invoice on Word and chase it up and collect their $200. Like, actually, we live in a world where monitoring effectiveness is actually easier and doesn't cost as much money. And that's number one point. Number 2 point is, Ray, that if you have the attitude where it's just all too hard, then I hate to say it, but I think your writing's on the wall just with that attitude. You've got to actually have the attitude, and I'm not talking about monitoring every single item of every single part of your business. You're a small business, actually. Fundamentally, you don't have a lot to a small business, but you do need to monitor some of those core things. You need to monitor, your products, your pricing, your data around those products. If you're a service-based business, how many hours, what's my average revenue per hour? These sorts of things are really important to monitor so that you can become better in a business. Yeah.
No, fair enough. Okay, related to that, the second area that you talked about in your article was sales and employee performance data. So what do businesses need to do in that area?
Look, it is an extension of the first point. And that is, I'd like to think, accountants are the most important part of business, but actually, the drivers of business is your sales and your marketing and basically how you build your business from a front-end perspective. And in order to do that, you need data to understand your business. From a sales point of view, you need to understand your divisions. If you've got a business where you've got 3 or 4 divisions that make up your 3 or 4 million revenue. You need to understand which divisions, what's the revenue from those divisions, from a sales point of view, what the gross margin is from those different divisions, and how that turns into which area of the business is profitable versus not profitable. From an employee point of view, you need to understand your employee performance so that you're driving performance within the business, and you've got data to enable you to do that. It's obvious with salespeople, sales commission, sales performance, that sort of data becomes critical to the success of your business. And having that data at your fingertips is critical to, once again, decision making. And there's a balance. I'm not an advocate of spend your whole life looking at data and not on your business. You actually should be spending most of your time on your business, which is the challenge that a business owner has, which what you alluded to before. But without data, then you basically you're driving blind.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, tell us about the importance of managing cash flow.
Well, I think it sort of almost goes without. It's critical. So it's your lifeblood of your business. Obviously, for those people out there, they've got very, very profitable businesses. There's, generating a lot of cash flow. It's probably not the number one thing that they're looking at because it's a natural part of their business. But often those people that do have that created that by having good working capital, cash flow management, methodologies within their business and how their business operates. So you need to understand your cash flow. You need to understand working capital. So working capital is turning your customer revenue, minus what you've got receivable from your customers versus what you've got to pay to your suppliers or the tax office and all that sort of stuff. And really, cash flow management is really about that. It's like, how do I receive my revenue from my customers before I have to pay it to my suppliers? Is that actually viable? Some business models actually have that as a viable part of their business, actually get paid before they have to deliver a job, by way of example. Most business models are not that generous, but the reality of it is that, the more you can tend towards that, the stronger your cash flows are going to be. Obviously, then fundamentally, you need to be a profitable business to have good cash flows. So it's understanding your working capital and how your customers convert into cash and how you collect your cash, and then how you deal with your suppliers and how you pay your suppliers and how you manage that cash flow movement within your business. Then people like me step in and we look at forecasted cash flows. What does it look like in terms of your cash flow, month 1, month 2, month 3, potentially at least out 3 to 6 months to see what your forecasted cash flows are, because you might be doing something in your business, like one of my big manufacturing businesses, we're bringing in machines, and or you're building factories, and that in 3 months' time, you've got big outlays to come. So you don't want to just turn up in 3 months' time and work that out. Now, I state the obvious, and most people will be planning for that, but you need to plan for it very well to know what cash flow you need for your business, and that leads to back my conversation about the likes of Fortescue, dead earlier at a cheaper price, knowing that they might need it in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, is what the big banks, are doing. So, in a small business, it's actually a lot easier, but you've got to do it. It's just, if you don't have a cash flow tool, you don't know your cash flows in your business, how can you run your business, basically?
Okay. Now, you touched on this briefly with your when you're talking about cash flow, but what should businesses be doing in terms of client-supplier agreements?
Well, like client-supplier agreements, really, our businesses is about the agreements that we go into. So we've got our client agreements, and what they look like, and the agreements flow into the terms with those clients, obviously the price, the terms around that, the warranties for the products or services that we're providing, and what those agreements and the length of the agreements, etc. And so, that agreement and how you structure those agreements really impacts then everything else. Impacts how your business is, how your cash flow, how your profitability is. Everything is impacted by these agreements. Let's state the obvious again, but so what you need to be able to do is continue to improve your agreement. So, from a customer point of view, trying to build in longer term customers or more valuable customers if it's project based. And from a supplier point of view, then once again, you're looking at your agreements around your suppliers. You're minimizing your risks with your suppliers. You sort of, they're assuming more risks around those agreements, particularly if you're outsourcing. So basically, you're in a position as a business whereby, you've got agreements with suppliers which, enable you to, to manage costs, for example. So, supplier agreements which have a lot of out of scope work and these sorts of things can mean that what you think is a $50,000 cost becomes $100,000. And use that agreement and that relationship with that supplier becomes critical.
So a good tight brief is always
better. Look, I know I've experienced that, in my business, but also in representing clients in major supplier and customer contract negotiations. Sometimes when things have gone bad, where we've got to step in. And we've got to, because a small business obviously struggles in agreements with very large businesses to negotiate those agreements. So if things don't quite work out, those agreements can actually impact the viability of that small business, full stop. And so, how you then manage those agreements and negotiate outcomes that allow the business to be beyond those sorts of things becomes a really critical component to be a successful business.
Okay. Now, one of the things that's come through, I guess, as a theme through the those 8 points that you had in your earlier article is about reviewing and, not just staying with the status quo, but looking at where you're at and evaluating it. So what about a company's products and services? Why should businesses review their products and services, even if things appear to be going well at the time?
Often, it's so challenging sometimes with successful business owners. They're making good money, they've got great products and services, and so why review it? Everything's going well. But the reality is that actually that's the time when competitors are often going to come in, because people can see there's the only cafe in the suburb that's just full every day. We all know that another one pops up within 6 to 12 months, and that's the reality of all business. Is if you're doing really well, it doesn't mean that you're really well, and it does mean that there's others that are going to see you're going to do well. There's employees within the organisation, or whether there's competitors, and people are looking at what you're doing that's so good, that's allowing you to grow and be successful. Whether it's on the marketing front, but obviously with your products and services. So the key is that if you by being a realist, you need to continue to improve your products and services, stay ahead of everyone else, because I mentioned global competition as a big factor. I mentioned economic environment, macroeconomic environment at the moment, and all these things mean that we need to continue always in business to be looking at our product. It's not something you put on the back bench and you put in the bottom of the drawer and you sort of go, I'm all sorted now, I'm going really well. It's actually, if by being complacent, it's the biggest risk that you place on your business. That's a time if you fundamentally, if I'm talking to a business owner and they've decided that, that actually, kind of they're at their peak and they're going really well, they should be talking to the likes of me about selling their business, exiting their business. That's actually the time to exit your business when you're actually at your peak. It's sometimes the hardest thing to grasp, but certainly from a personal financial outcome point of view, it's often the very best thing you can do. And obviously, if you're seeing even more growth, well, then you're seeing that growth because you're improving your products and services and your customers are coming in and you've got something that's competitive,
Yeah, and I suppose that helps from a competitive differentiation standpoint as well, that if, like you talked about your example of the local cafe, if potential competitors see that you're continually innovating and developing your product line, that is more likely to make them think, oh, well, actually, I won't set up in competition because these guys are doing such a good job that, I would be struggling to keep up.
Yeah, well, or the investment to actually go in there and compete against what they've got is a riskier investment. So why would I risk that money seeing that actually they've actually got such a strong competitive advantage in what they're doing, and they're continuing to do it better and better. I always look, the other example I give is, your Chinese restaurant, your local Chinese restaurant that was there 40 years ago and hasn't changed in 40 years. And then you get these modern Thai restaurants or other restaurants that come into your suburb, and, the Chinese restaurant's empty and the Thai restaurant's full. And why do people do that? They want to experience new things. They want to experience fresh food. Chinese restaurant might have their old customers, but those old customers drop off and off and off and off. You need to reinvent yourself as a business all the time. It's got to be part of your business mojo.
Yep. No, fair enough. And that kind of leads into your next point. Technology. What do businesses need to be doing about technology? You've kind of touched on this, but why is that so important?
Look, number one, and this is probably one of the biggest messages you can get today, is you got to embrace it. You got to embrace technology. I say that knowing that most businesses are. Everyone gets it. They're kind of trying to embrace technology, and people are embracing it and still not quite working it out. I had breakfast with another gentleman that's a very successful businessman. He's built a business to a couple of 100 million, sold businesses, and then he's now doing the same thing in the last 3 years, sort of built a business now to 80 million again. I'm talking to him, and he's talking about how they are embracing technology and what they're doing, in terms of the latest manufacturing methods and the latest technology and how they manufacture, but also in terms of online and the fact that, as much as, they've got lots of long-term customers, the core of their business, they still need to be doing their marketing around their online leads and their online marketing and their online social networks, etc. So embracing technology is critical in any business. The thing about it is, well, what am I embracing, right? So what actually does that mean, embracing technology? Obviously there's plenty of technology businesses that are set up that, whether they're online retail, or whether they're just core SaaS-based technology businesses, or any type of technology business. So, but embracing technology, talking to the majority of businesses out there, just look at it, number one, from how you generate business. So number one, embracing technology in terms of, Google, online leads, all these sorts of things, really understanding where your customers come from and what technology you need to be able to obviously get customers, quote to customers, manage customer flow. Number of businesses, Salesforce is a great tool for managing, customer opportunities, etc. These sorts of things become very important in terms of technology, and understanding what it is at the front end of your business to generate business. Having online sales, retail channel, moving your, maybe bricks and mortar retail business to an online business is, look at Dick Smith, how basically they've sold, their online platform, but not their retail stores. Quite an interesting proposition.
Yeah, that's right. And guess which ones are being shut down?
Yeah, that's right. And that's where most of the employment is as well. So it's quite, it just shows you the impact of technology. And then the biggest thing within most core businesses is how you just run your business using technology. So, obviously, from your accounting functions to your CRM systems, and just how you run and operate your business on a day-to-day basis, technology is integral in how you must run your business. You just have to get more efficient, because the biggest message out of that is that if you don't, others will. You know, if you're not continuing to improve the way you're doing your businesses, there is someone that comes along and that will. And that just means that you're suddenly at a disadvantage. It might be a minor disadvantage at first. So it's reinvesting in your business all the time in terms of becoming more effective, more efficient, more capable, and more savvy. And technology, today's day and age, is just one of the biggest components of being that.
Yeah, I think another theme that's kind of coming out from all this is the idea of embracing change, and that if you cannot start up a business and just think, whereas you might have, a few decades ago, if you're doing one thing successfully, you can come a period of time. But today, whether it's technology or any of these other issues, that just things are just changing so rapidly that if you're not prepared to change, then it's quite likely you won't be in business before too long.
I think it's almost definitely. It's almost definitely that you won't be in business in the medium to long term. That's for sure. And lots of large successful businesses. You just have to look at almost the top 10 companies on the NASDAQ 10 years ago. There's big changes going on, and that's caused by changes in the environment and changes in this whole digital world that we're now living in.
All right. Now, you mentioned in the original report that it's important to look at not only the strategy, but the structure of your business. Why is that important?
Well, when I talk about structure, there's 3 components to it. So the obvious one, your organizational structure. So your team, your people, who they are, and they play in the organization. Having structure around that is really important, because you don't want pushing over tasks. You want people to have certain levels of authority, and that structure, that organizational structure, is really critical. Your team is your company. Your people in your team is your company, and having structure around that team and the roles they play. Number one, you need to have that, and you need to get that right. Because that gets back to being an efficient, effective business. The second component to it is that you've got an operational structure. It's how you operate, whether you've got a machine assembly line, whether you've got specific divisions that do different things, whether you're structured by products or by services or by different businesses at an operational level structure themselves in different ways. And it's getting that right in terms of your value chain of your business, once again, so that you're operating as effectively as possible and efficiently as possible in what you do, and that ultimately whatever that product or service is that you're giving to your customer, they've got the best possible experience. And so you need to get that right. And that when you talk about embracing change, that is some decisions to make, right? So whatever you do, whether you're selling real estate or you're doing anything that you're doing in business, it's actually looking at what's working and what's not working. And you actually might need to change a business model that you believed in 10 years ago, but actually isn't logical. And that gets back to the structure. You get tied into your structure of how you operate. And that's why big businesses are so vulnerable to disruption by small businesses. Small businesses are so flexible and can do whatever and just look at an opportunity and just grab that opportunity and build from there, because they say, actually, the market doesn't want what this big company is doing anymore. Actually, the market wants this. And then the final bit is obviously just your corporate structure. Your corporate structure becomes very important in terms of how you structure your organizations, your companies, your corporate structure. And that's important from how you operate, how you engage with customers. Also important from having effective structure from a tax perspective. Obviously, if you're paying more tax than you need to pay because you've got the wrong structure in place, well then that's less money that you can put into growing your businesses and making them successful. So these are the things that I think about when I talk about structure. So when I go in and I review it, so I do a strategic review of a business, and I work out, you know, what's right in their structure. You know, should they sack their CEO? You know, what is right in their structure? What's wrong in their structure? Which products are profitable? Which, you know, how does their structure operate? It's looking at that, and it's sort of looking at it from an independent point of view to say, actually, what about this structure? Would this actually work better to make your business actually stronger and more viable in the medium to long term? Because it's always trying to look ahead. It's a game of chess. Business is a game of chess. If you're just focused on the move that you're moving right now without thinking about, you know, 2, 3, 10 moves ahead, then the chances are, if someone's 2 or 3 or 10 moves ahead of you, then you're at a disadvantage. And it's how to basically be thinking about those moves in advance, not just sort of sitting here in the now and going, everything's cozy, you know, I can see that I can maybe take his queen. Actually, you know, if I do that, I've got a big problem. You know, that might be good. I might, you know, have a really good advantage right now. I might take his queen, but I might end up losing a lot of my pieces on that chess game. So that's structure is fundamentally, you've got to get that right in your business.
Right. Okay. Now, finally, we talked earlier about monitoring effectiveness. Related to that is this idea of key performance indicators. You know, why is it important to not just set them and forget them, but review them on a regular basis?
Yeah, look, you get a lot of business coaches, you know, advisors and people out there that harp on about key performance business tech. So, you know, it's scary when a lot of them, you sort of say to them, well, how much did you turn over last month? I don't know, my accountant hasn't figured that last year. My accountant hasn't finished the figures for last year, so when he gets them to me, I'll understand how my business is going. It's like, well, you know, how are you going from month to month? And like, oh, I know how my business is going. I'm doing 200 grand a month or 2 million a month. And okay, that's good. And, you know, is that good or bad? Or, you know, explain it to me. Oh, you know, it's not a bad month. You know, normally I do 210 or you know, why didn't you do 210? I just had a bit of a slow month, you know, whatever the reasons are. And fundamentally, the conversation stops there. And when you're looking at that business, it actually becomes very hard to then work out what is actually going on in that business. What are the drivers behind that business that's resulting in that $200,000? So it might be that one product you've actually done exceptionally well with, 3 other products you've actually done quite poorly with.
Okay, sorry about that. Small technical hitch. I think we're back on. So if you want to, you were talking about KPIs.
Yeah, no, I was talking about KPIs, and I was talking about the situation where a business owner has, you know, 200 grand turnover, and I'm talking to them about how'd they go, and, you know, they sort of said, well, last month I did 210. I'm down at 10 grand on last month. It's not a bad result. And you're trying to talk to understand, well, what does that mean? What has resulted in having, you know, I did 250 instead of what they thought they might do to, you know, and they might know, well, these particular products are going much better, but why are they going better? Is it that you're selling them for a higher price? Is it that you've just sold more of them? Is it that you've actually got a worse gross margin because you've sold them, but it's cost you more to produce them? So you sold them at a lower price, but you got higher turnover. And it's really, what is a key performance indicator? It's the indicators that drive the business's performance. And so it's really getting to understand that information. And we're doubling up a little bit on what I've talked about earlier, Ray, but people need to understand this inside their business. So, you know, you look at your business, you know, how many leads am I getting? You know, what's my conversion of leads into customers? You know, of those customers, you know, how often do they buy from me? You know, what's my lifetime value of that customer? You know, how much does it cost me to get a customer? Is it costing me more to get a customer than what I'm earning from that customer?
In case, what's the point?
Which products are actually I'm selling more of? Which are on the incline? Which are on the decline? What does that data look like over 3 years, over 3 months, over 3 weeks? You know, and then you know, a service-based business. How many hours did I actually sell last month? So you did 200 grand turnover. Did I sell 2,000 hours? Did I sell 1,000 hours? You know, what? How many hours did I sell? You know, what's my average price per hour? Has that increased? Has that decreased? If I'm selling products, what's my average customer sale? What's my average square meters? You know, manufacturing business. What's my average square meters sold? Or what's my average kilogram of product sold? Or, you know, so it's actually getting back to these core points to understand at a unit level, am I actually profitable at a unit level? Am I actually driving performance to get more leads to result in higher profitability? Am I driving the right product? So if I don't understand my KPIs around my products and my product's profitability and how I operate, am I spending money on marketing in something that actually I shouldn't be spending on marketing in? And so your key performance indicators are basically indicators of your viability and your success of your business. Too many businesses sort of know their P&L and sort of, I'm going really well, I'm making a lot of money, and I understand my business, but they understand it sort of like, you know, they kind of understand it. And really what they need to understand is the drivers behind their business. And once you set that up, that should just be like clockwork. You get that information every single week, every single month, and you know your drivers of your business that result in that 200,000. So when you're looking at it, you're not just going, I'm down by 10 grand. You're going, well, I'm down because I sold less of this product at a lower margin or at a, you know, at a lower price point because I had this deal with these particular customer groups, or I had a promotion, or I had a, so you actually know what's resulting in your performance. And then you can decide, do I do that again next year? Don't I do that promotion next year? What's the impact of all these sorts of things? You know, which customers are, you know, is my customer demographic changing? What's causing that result? And it works both on the upside and on the downside. But if I'm talking to a business where they're going, okay, you know, Ray, you did 200 grand this month. Your target was 210 grand. You missed it. Well, that's, you know, do better next month, Ray. Do better there. You know, you're down by 10. You need to, you know, you need to sell more, Ray. Good luck. You know, let's chat again next month. And that's what a lot of conversations are around. And fundamentally, you're not actually helping someone in your business, and the business owner's not helping themselves. And we're not talking about thousands, we're talking about a dozen KPIs that are critical to your business performance. Because you know that if I can go from 100 leads to 1,000 leads, that should result in going from, you know, $100,000 to $1 million.
Yeah.
And actually, so don't focus on getting to $1 million, focus on getting to 1,000 leads. What is it that's getting me to my leads?
Right. Yeah, okay. Great. Well, thank you very much for all that information. Now, when people were registering for the webinar, we asked them if they, you know, had any questions for you. And I've got one, and it's actually quite a good practical hypothetical type question, if you like.
Okay.
So what this person said was, they said, look, we're a startup, and what we want to find out is when's the right time for a company to bring in a CFO, a chief financial officer, or a bookkeeper, and what does this life cycle look like when, as they say, capital is oxygen in an early business phase? So I guess they're saying, you know, a startup business, when do we need to start actually bringing on that type of financial staff?
Yeah, you know, one of our business units is CFO Australia. CFO Australia is, you know, we do CFO consulting from very much, you know, project roles to part-time CFOs that might work in a business one day a month to, you know, full-time CFOs that we place in the market, and we're the highest profile business that does that CFO service. A CFO is very different to a bookkeeper, of course. So a bookkeeper is really just processing your books. You know, deal with bookkeepers first. So you start up a business. Yep, you know, the startup concept is you got to actually build your product, build your platform, build your business first, and then you got to sell it. You know, you've got to get it to market. You've got to get revenue. You've got to get that going. So, you know, then you've got a need for bookkeeping. So you need to sort of, whether you do it yourself or you get someone in to do it, you know, you need to maintain your books, you know, because there's a compliance regime around it. There's often good reasons to do that, whereby you're maintaining your books, and you got obviously you can look at ways to generate money, like through research and development claims, and, you know, different tax initiatives for your business. But bookkeeping is like a must-have, right? The CFO side becomes quite important for a lot of startup businesses when they're looking to raise capital. They need models around raising capitals, or they need thought processes into how to do that. You know, they need to be able to support that activity to talk to investors about that. So there's sometimes, you know, we quite often go in and do a role with it. Those go in and do a role around helping a business understand and that's a very low touch sort of role that can come into play and help a startup understand, you know, their business, to be able to present that and raise capital and, you know, achieve what they need to do. Even a lot of founders just engage us in that capacity just to help them understand what they're trying to achieve with their business in terms of growing that technology business. And then as a business starts to gain more traction, so, you know, might get to 50 or 100 grand, there becomes, you know, a definite need to start to introduce a lot of the key metrics, you know, like the key performance indicators that I talked about. Because if you're talking to investors, whether you're doing Series A funding or, you know, angel funding rounds or whatever, they're looking at those metrics. It's become, you know, you need to understand your data. So some of that modeling in those metrics, you know, particularly in startup technology businesses, around customer churn rates, you know, recurring revenue from customers, customer cost of acquisitions, all these rates become very important to understand within your startup business, for that person out there that's asked that question. So, you know, having a CFO involved in your business, even just one day a month, to help sort of put that in place, have a meeting with them, consult with them, provide that financial nous within your business so that you're ready and able to have those conversations that can be critical to your long-term success. That's where I say for people in early stage businesses, I know, you know, cash is oxygen in your business, but it's sort of, you need to invest something in that to be able to actually have a viable business in the long run.
And what you mentioned about sometimes only a drug. So you're saying it is entirely feasible for companies to not like get to a point where they say, okay, if I need a CFO, I need to hire someone and have a full-time resource. You can sort of phase your way into it. You can phase your way into it, you know, from when you start up to having an initial, you know, building a relationship with someone that can scale with you and grow with you. And then, of course, the wonderful achievement is to get to a size of business where actually you can afford a full-time CFO. But, you know, as a good CFO in the market, if you really want to get a viable CFO, you know, they're a big investment. And you know, and it's different to just a financial controller that can churn out numbers. It's about, actually, when we talk about CFO, it's actually someone that's got corporate advisory, strategic thinking, that actually can actually help you make the right decisions. Not someone that can actually give you figures. Right. Okay. Well, just listening to your discussion this afternoon is sort of as one wrap-up question. You're not letting me off the hook here, right? No, I'm not letting you off the hook. It's sort of like you're talking about the importance of being able to cope with change and the importance of data and make sure you're embracing technology and all that. On one level, I think it almost sounds a bit terrifying to be in a small and medium business these days. Now, as someone yourself, who advises small businesses, but also you've built your own small business, like why is it a good time to be involved, to start up a business today, or to be involved in small business, and rather than just saying, oh, too hard, I'll just go and work for somebody else?
Oh, look, I think it is actually the best time ever to have a crack at small business, with disruption, with technology, with change out there. We've never ever had such a good time to look at starting up new businesses. I mean, look at the government. The Turnbull government's bringing in a 20% tax rebate for investing in startup technology businesses. Well, that's fantastic. The government wants, Australia to be competitive on the world stage and to evolve, successful businesses that can have global reach. And so they're saying to investors out there, you'll get a 20% tax rebate for investing in startup businesses. We're doing a number of events around that to explain that to the market. It's a really exciting initiative. But, look, I just think right now there's so much change going on in the market, and so it's a great opportunity to actually start up a small business. The economy, the economy at the moment, lends itself to that. Sometimes I talk about, we might have challenges around the corner in terms of our macroeconomic environment, but that is a great opportunity for successful businesses to emerge and startups to emerge to actually disrupt. Because a lot of the established businesses are so concerned about their model and what they're doing and maybe aren't listening to my conversation today. And actually, so it's a great opportunity for startup businesses. Look, I'm excited. I'm just so passionate about small business, right? So I can't help myself. But and I'm involved in and I invest in small businesses, and I just I live and breathe them. And so I'm one of those people who would say to anyone, if you've got a great idea, you've got something that you're excited about, you have one chance in your life, or a handful of chances in your life to give it a crack. Why not? Give it a go. And now's as good a time as any to do that.
Okay, great. Well, I think that sounds like a good place to finish. So, Michael, thank you very much for your time. That was really interesting and informative. If you want more information about Michael's business and whether there might be some opportunities for you there, you can go to azuregroup.com.au. And meanwhile, if you want more information about helping to set up and run a business, you can also find out information at businesspropel.com.au. And we have a lot of resources, and particularly we've got a lot of diagnostic tools that can help you review where you're at as a business and what sort of actions you might be able to take to help to be successful in the future. So thanks very much for your time, and best of luck with your work.